It's 10 after 5 p.m. I haven't slept in 2 days. I can feel the gnawing dread. I can't give in, not again. But the itch, the hunger. Why me? Why must I be so hungry? Tonight is the last night I hunger, hide, I consume. Fight, I must fight, win or lose, I won't be taken. The itch, the howl, was that me? Why? Who? Not again, me, no again, no. The light is terrifying, comforting. No, scared. I'm not scared. I can feel my heartbeat in my head, in my chest. The itch, the light. It's blinding, calling. Just once more, I could no more. Bathed in the silvery moonlight, my skin burns, unbearable, demanding. I scratch in anguish, help me, save me, keep me, release me. Gentle push is all I needed. What are werewolves? Well, in folklore, a werewolf is a human with the ability to shapeshift into a wolf, either purposefully or being placed under a curse or affliction, with the transformation occurring on the night of a full moon. Early sources of belief in this ability or affliction called it lycanthropy. Now, there's a difference between werewolves and lycanthropes, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Now, the werewolf is a widespread concept in European folklore, existing in many variants, which are related by common development of the Christian interpretation of underlying European folklore developed during the medieval period. From the early modern period, werewolf beliefs are also spread to the New World with colonialism. Belief in werewolves developed a parallel into the beliefs in witches. In the course of the late Middle Ages and the early modern period, like the witchcraft trials as a whole, the trials of supposed werewolves emerged in what is now Switzerland in the early 15th century and spread throughout Europe in the 16th, peaking in the 17th, and then subsiding in the 18th century. Now, the persecution of werewolves and the associated folklore in this integral part of the witch hunt phenomenon, albeit a marginal one, accusations of lycanthropy being involved in only a small fraction of witchcraft trials. During the early period, accusations of lycanthropy were mixed with accusations of wolf riding or wolf charming. In the case of Peter Stump in 1589, led to a significant peak in the interest in and persecution of supposed werewolves, primarily in French-speaking and German-speaking Europe. Phenomenon persisted longest in Bavaria and Austria, which stands to reason because that's the birthplace of vampires and all sorts of classical folklore, with persecution of wolf charmers recorded until well after 1650, the final cases taking place in the early 18th century in Carinthia and Styria. After the end of the witch trials, the werewolf became of interest in folklore studies and in the emerging Gothic horror genre. Werewolf fiction as a genre has pre-modern precedents in medieval romances and developed in the 18th century out of a semi-fictional chapbook series. The trappings of horror literature in the 20th century became part of the horror and fantasy genre in modern pop culture. There's several different ways to look at this. Is this just something that people made up because they were ignorant and scared, and they needed a way to sonify it so they had a way to focus their fear? Or is this based in medical fact? Now, the folklore or mythos behind werewolves it's a little bit harder to nail down because there's so many different accounts, but let's try to sort this out, shall we? The beliefs classed under lycanthropy are far from uniform, and the term is somewhat capriciously applied. The transformation may be temporary or permanent. The were animal may be the man himself metamorphosed, may be his double whose activity leaves the real man to all appearance unchanged, may be his soul which goes forth seeking whomever it may devour, leaving its body in a state of a trance. Or it may be no more than a messenger of the human being, a real animal or a familiar spirit, whose intimate connection with its owner is shown by the fact that the injury to it is believed by a phenomenon. Now, werewolves are said to carry over traits from being a wolf creature into their human aesthetic. So, in European folklore, supposedly, they have telltale traits which are as follows. The meeting of both eyebrows at the bridge of the nose, so a unibrow, curved fingernails like coke nails, low-set ears, and a swinging stride, kind of like a cross-dressing Bigfoot. Also, one method of identifying a werewolf in its human form is to cut the flesh of the accused under the pretense that fur would be seen within the wound. Do not run out and cut people with unibrows. Don't do that. A Russian superstition recalls a werewolf can be recognized by bristles under the tongue. Again, don't stick your fingers in Russian people's mouths. The appearance of a werewolf in its animal form varies from culture to culture, though it is most commonly portrayed as being indistinguishable from ordinary wolves, save the fact that it has no tail. It is often larger and retains human eyes and a voice, according to some Swedish accounts. The werewolf could be distinguished from a regular wolf by the fact that it would run on 3 legs, stretching the 4th one backwards to look like a tail. That is absolutely ridiculous sounding. After returning to their human forms, werewolves are usually documented as becoming weak, debilitated, undergoing painful nervous depression. One universally reviled trait in medieval Europe was the werewolf's habit of devouring recently buried corpses. Now, how do you become one of these glorious creatures, you may wonder? Now, various methods of becoming a werewolf have been reported. One of the simplest is by removal of the clothing and putting on a belt made of wolfskin. Sure, probably as a substitute for assumption of the entire animal's skin. Okay. In other cases, you rub your body with a magic salve. Also, drinking rainwater out of the footprint of an animal, or from a certain enchanted stream, were also considered effectual modes of accomplishing metamorphosis. The 16th century Swedish writer Olaus Magnus says that the Livonian werewolves were initiated by draining a cup of specially prepared beer and repeating a set formula. The Rolston, in a song of the Russian people, gives the form of incantation similar still familiar in Russia. In Italy, France, and Germany, it is said that a man or woman could turn into a werewolf if he or she, on a certain Wednesday or Friday, sleep outside on a summer night with the full moon shining directly on his or her face. Highly unlikely. But what do I know? In other cases, the transformation was supposedly accomplished by satanic allegiance for the most loathsome ends, often for the sake of sating a craving for human flesh. Ew. Here is where it gets kind of interesting, because this is where the satanic panic sets in, and it is talked about as being a curse. So, the curse of lycanthropy was also considered by some scholars as being a divine punishment. Werewolves in literature shows many examples of gods or saints allegedly cursing those invoke their wrath with lycanthropy. Such is the case of Lycaon, who was turned into a wolf by Zeus as punishment for slaughtering one of his own sons and serving his remains to the gods as a dinner. Yeah, that happened. So they didn't have anything to feed Zeus, so they killed one of his own sons, cut him up, and basically had a human barbecue, and then served it to Zeus and as an audience of other gods. And then Zeus was like, yo, bro, what the hell, man? And basically something along the lines of, if you want to act like wild animals, then you shall be. So he turned him and all his sons into hybrid wolf creatures. Those who were excommunicated by the Roman Catholic Church were also said to become werewolves. Again, religious. The power of transforming others into wild beasts was attributed not only with malignant sorcerers, but the Christian saints as well. So now you have saints turning people into wolves. Now, and here is the last part of it. A notable expectation of this association of lycanthropy and the devil comes from a rare, lesser-known account of an 80-year-old man named Theseus. In 1692, in Johannesburg, Livonia, Theseus testified under oath now that he and other werewolves were the hounds of God. He claimed they were warriors who descended into hell to battle witches and demons, and probably vegans. Their effort ensured that the devil and his minions did not carry off the grain from local failed crops down to hell. Theseus was steadfast in his assertion, claiming that werewolves in Germany and Russia also did battle with the devil's minions in their own versions of hell, and insisted that when werewolves died, their souls were welcomed into heaven as a reward for their service. Theseus was ultimately sentenced to 10 lashes for idolatry and superstitious beliefs. Now, if you were cursed or gifted or bitten or just happen to have an unfortunate unibrow, here are several beliefs that you can cure yourself, stemming from medieval Europe. Allegedly, there are 3 methods to cure victims of lycanthropy: medicinally, surgically, or by exorcism. However, many of the cures advocated by medieval medical practitioners provide fatal to their patients. You don't say, you peasants. A Sicilian belief of Arabic origin holds that a werewolf can be cured by its ailment by striking it on the forehead or scalp with a knife. So, the Sicilians learned from the Arabics that if you stab somebody in the head, they will no longer be a werewolf. Fantastic. Another belief from the same culture involves the piercing of the wolf's hands with nails. Okay. But luckily, Sometimes less extreme methods were used. In the German lowlands, for example, a werewolf could be cured if one were simply addressed it 3 times by its Christian name, while one Danish belief holds that merely scolding a werewolf will cure it. So you're going to talk it into giving up? Fantastic. Conversion to Christianity is also a common method of removing lycanthropy. In the medieval period, a devotion to Saint Hubert has also been cited as both a cure for and protection from lycanthropes. Interesting. Interesting.